Adrift in the halls of Tri-County High School, Frankie Romano knew she had lost her mind. The school looked real enough, but then again, so did the other place. Critical thinking told Frankie that the other place couldn't have been real, just a bizarre dream. But in some freaky way, Frankie could still feel the other place in her bones. Ever since waking up, she felt off, her body as uncomfortable as a cheap Halloween costume. For now, Frankie was sure of only one thing. If by some miracle that other place wasn't just a dream, then her life was about to change forever, there was only one way to find out. Frankie sighed and glanced down at a wrinkled-up flyer she'd been clinging to like a life raft. According to the flyer, the Godsend Club met on the second floor in room 213. As she stumbled her way up the stairs, Frankie could feel nervous sweat soak through her hoodie. Frankie hated talking, especially to strangers, a skill applauded in her toddler years, but as a teenage transfer student, her reservation wasn't exactly making her many friends. However, current circumstances necessitated Frankie abandon her comfort zone. Upon reaching room 213, Frankie paused and took in a deep breath, hyping herself up for human contact. Then, very slowly, she opened the door, peering in like a spy. Room 213 was nothing special, as basic as classrooms come, just inspirational posters and millennial math memes. Littered throughout the room were the club's members, 6 boys.
Excuse me?
Frankie croaked weakly, but the boys were deaf to her. One of them was passed out at a desk, while the other 5 were furiously engaged in a card game. Like a lost ghost, Frankie drifted further into the room, praying that someone would see her. As her view expanded, Frankie spotted a grown man hunched over the teacher's desk snoring loudly. Then, before she knew it, one of the boys glanced up at her, and without so much as a goodbye, her soul fled her body. Can I help you?" the boy asked. Instantly, the room fell silent. All eyes locked on Frankie. Her confidence long gone, English was quickly becoming a second language.
Is this the, Godsend Club?
Frankie mumbled. Sheepishly, she held out the wrinkled-up flyer like it were some holy object. "Nope," one of the other boys said, his face as cheerful as a brick. In an instant, Frankie's heart sank. "What?" Yes, Spud, it is," the first boy corrected, returning a shred of hope to Frankie's heart. No, Chuck. This isn't the Godsend Club. We are the Godsend Club." Spud smiled, visibly very proud of himself. Spud was a hefty kid, his blocky head protected by a helmet of fluffy hair. Wrapped around the boy's neck like a cape was a blue hoodie branded with the school's mascot, Kid Knight. Where most should have a watch, instead Spud had 2 decrepit silly bands hanging onto his wrist for dear life. "Sorry about Spud here. I wish I could say he's not usually like this, but he is," sighed the first boy, Chuck. Well-groomed with clothes that matched, Chuck was a stark contrast to Spud, who seemed to treat color theory like a challenge. "Actually, my brain's still fried from anatomy, so usually I'm even more cleverer," Spud countered.
Anatomy. So that sounds tough,"
Frankie said, hoping to make friendly conversation before her deranged question ruined the vibe. "Oh, you're telling me Barbara had us dissecting feral cats? I mean, what kind of Jeffrey Dahmer school are we going to?" "Cats are demons, devil's spawn. They make Moderex look like my grandma," hissed a skeletal boy with thick glasses and a beat-up black hoodie. "Timmy, Moderex does look like your grandma," Spud snickered, causing all the other boys to burst with laughter. As Moderex's image flashed in her mind, even Frankie let out an involuntary giggle. One of the many creatures from the Godsend card game, Moderex was an ugly demon who slept on a bed of skulls. A real funny guy's picking on a dead lady. No. Really? She died? Wait, was that the grandma who drove us to McDonald's that one time? Or the one who thinks JFK Jr. is still alive? Yeah, JFK Jr. one. Okay, now I don't feel bad. That's not the point. Those cats deserved it. They're lucky I wasn't in that class. Well, then maybe you should have studied more, Chuck quipped. "I did, but unlike you, I have a life outside of this school." "What life? It's 4 on a Friday." "Uno reverse card," Timmy yelled, whipping out a crumpled-up Uno card from his pocket. Would you stop doing that? The meme's dead," Spud groaned, trying to yank it away. "Boys, please, we've company," Chuck heckled. "Why? If she's joining, she needs to get used to our energy." Timmy grinned, waving his hands around like Dr. Strange. "Wait, are you interested in joining?" Spud asked, his head snapping over to Frankie, eager as a puppy.
I don't know. I just have some questions."
"Well, we'll give you time to think. We're almost done with our game. Here, have a seat," Chuck smiled, pulling over a chair. Still governed by nerves, Frankie made an uneasy home of the seat. For 5 minutes, there she sat, watching intently as the boys played. All the while, they exchanged roasts and inside jokes that Frankie doubted she'd ever understand. When the two boys closest to Frankie finished their game, they looked back at her. "So you have questions?" "Oh, I'm Chuck, by the way." "Wait, what was your name again?"
Frankie? Frankie Romano?
Then, channeling Mr. Rogers, Frankie forced her face into a friendly smile that ended up looking more like the Joker than anything close to Mr. Rogers. "Romano. Wait, are you related to Chris Romano?"
Yeah, he's my cousin.
The two of them didn't exactly have the best history together. "Yo-ho, he's my neighbor. Chris, hey," Spud moaned in a flamboyant voice. "What about Ray Romano?" Timmy snickered, pushing up his glasses. "Jesus, Timmy, how do you do it? I've heard of beating a dead horse, but never, in all my years, have I seen anyone slaughter a dead horse. Truly, your comedic mind is once in a generation." "Give it a rest, fatso," Timmy muttered, his glasses fogging. "Good heavens," gasped the boy with blonde hair, nearly dropping his gold Apple Watch out of shock. "Timothy, how could you say something so mean?" "Why, Timmy, why?" Spud whined, theatrically grabbing at Timmy. "God, Spud, would you just cut it out already?" growled a grim-faced boy, lounging like a corpse, his body smothered in a green windbreaker 3 sizes too big. With teeth shackled by braces, this boy's face was in a perpetual state of grief, his eyes dark and dead like a zombie's. "Come on, Jacob, quit being such a wet blanket." "Spud, shush." "Roy and Beaker," Chuck hissed, gesturing to the boy and teacher passed out at their desks. Kicking himself for the mistake, a deflated Spud returned to his seat. Anyways, Frankie, what brings you here?" Chuck smiled, ready to get everything back on track.
Well, I have a question.
"Shoot." Looking down at her feet, Frankie mentally prepared herself for the embarrassment she was soon to suffer.
During lunch, I had a weird dream, but it wasn't, I don't know, it felt...
"Hang on. Matt, could you get some chips from the vending machine?" Without a second's pause, Chuck pulled out a $10 bill so smoothly that it almost seemed rehearsed. "Right now?" asked the blonde-haired boy Matt, clearly missing the script. Looking for reassurance, Matt shot the grim-faced Jacob a confused glance. But Jacob just shrugged. "Yeah, for our guest."
Oh, I'm not hungry.
"No, it's my treat." "Matt, go," Chuck ordered, forcing the bill into his hand. Okay. Matt surrendered, cautiously leaving the classroom. With Matt gone, Spud sprinted to close the door. "Frankie, I know what you're about to say."
You do?
"Yes. Frankie, during lunch, you went to Godsend. For real."
How did you know?
With a smirk, Chuck gestured at the passed-out boy and teacher. "You see those two?
Yeah?
They're in Godsend, right now."
Really?
"Oh yeah. Let me guess, after winning some online games, your app glitched and got stuck on a weird coin?"
Yes.
The same thing happened to us. Unlocking his phone, Chuck revealed the same app and coin that had appeared on Frankie's phone. Believe me, I thought I was crazy too. "You are," Spud quipped, but Chuck ignored him. "For better or worse, thanks to this club, I found out there were others like me, people who've been to the game for real." "So what kingdom did you end up in? Azure?"
I wasn't there long, but I think so.
"Hang on, this is very important. Where were you when you logged out?"
Why?
When you're just starting out, your game body is vulnerable, even after you log out.
Won't I respawn?
"No," Jacob growled. "Frankie, if your game body dies, that's it. You're out. And with it, all your memories of Godsend." "Matt, you know the kid I just sent to get snacks? Well, he died," Jacob interrupted.
Oh my god. I'm so sorry.
Frankie said. "He can't remember anything about our time in Godsend. All the adventures, the friends, the battles, nothing. So we have to be careful talking about it with him around, or he'll think we're crazy." Chuck sighed.
And he's still in the, club?
Frankie asked nervously. "Of course he is. He's our friend. Nothing will change that." Jacob snapped, jumping to his feet. "Jacob, calm down," Chuck whispered, grabbing his shoulder. Immediately, Jacob shook Chuck's hand off, launching his gaze out the window. Outside, the trees were ablaze with autumn color. Early October was the peak of fall beauty in New England. Right now it was chilly, but not cold, and the world was yet to lose its color. As Jacob glared out the window, his bleary eyes became fixed on a murder of crows assembled around a dead squirrel. After 5 seconds of brooding, Jacob sighed and returned his attention to the club. "Matt'll be back soon. He can't hear this. I'll keep him for as long as I can." With that, Jacob stormed out of the room. "Sorry about that, Frankie. Those two have been friends forever, but it's been tough on everyone. Hell, Matt's sister still won't talk to us," Chuck groaned.
That sounds awful.
"Yeah, so we better get you sorted so history doesn't repeat itself. Where did you log out?"
I think my body was in an alley.
Classy. Spud chuckled. Listen, Frankie, you need to go back to Godsend right now. Since you still remember everything, your game body isn't dead yet. You need to make your way over to Adeo.
Adeo?
It's an academy for humans. Visually speaking, it's hard to miss.
Why's that?
Because it's a giant temple that looks like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, Timmy corrected. I swear to God. Spud groaned, strangling the air with his hands. Frankie, we'd go with you, but the 4 of us are actually on a boat. Chuck sighed.
A boat?
Yeah, I don't want to get into it right now. But we have this room until 4:30, so you have about an hour before we have to wake you. Luckily, Mr. Beaker and Roy aren't on the boat, so hopefully you run into them. Roy's also a newbie, and Beaker was planning on showing him Adeo, but a quick warning. Mr. Beaker, looks different in-game.
How different?
Immediately, Spud let out a loud cackle. In-game, he's Miss Beaker. Or Jackie if he's talking to a cute guy.
Oh, well, in-game, I'm Frank.
No way, Timmy gasped. I love Godsend. Spud chuckled. Well then, Godspeed, Frank, Chuck smirked.
Thanks.
Cheeks burning with embarrassment, Frankie whipped out her phone, opening the Godsend app. Immediately, the phone was consumed by a sea of fire. Then an ancient coin bearing the portrait of a goat materialized in the center of the screen. Cautiously, Frankie pressed her thumb to the coin. Glancing one last time at the others, Frankie was comforted by Chuck, who gave her a reassuring nod. Ready to take the plunge, Frankie closed her eyes. Before long, the sounds of the school faded into a tranquil silence, her senses vanishing without a trace. Suddenly, as quickly as they had vanished, her senses exploded back into her, now immersed in another world. She was no longer Frankie. Now she was Frank, a curly-haired adult man with a scuffed-up navy tunic. Drowsily, Frank awoke, ignorant of his current circumstance. To his surprise, he was lying in the back of a carriage stacked with other sleeping humans. Upon this realization, Frank panicked, digging through the stack like a human mole. With boundless energy, Frank burst out of the carriage onto the busy street. The second his boots struck the ground, Frank was almost run down by another carriage. Coming to a screeching stop, just barely, the carriage avoided the brutal collision. Sorry, Frank stuttered, completely floored by the floral pony pulling the carriage. It was as if a peacock, a horse, and a garden all fused into one beautiful creature.
Watch yourself, human,
screamed the carriage driver, an angry-looking goat known as the Pannon. A race of upright goats, the Pannon were the current inhabitants of the Azure Mountains. Pannon seemed to either love humans or hate them. Very little were fence-sitters. From years of playing the card game, Frank had learned his fair share. After bumbling out of the way like a lost toddler, Frank scanned his surroundings. He was encircled by Azure, a majestic city of painted marble and stone altars, so beautiful that by comparison, Rome looked about as cultured as Cleveland. Peering through the Mediterranean sun, Frank searched the skylines for any leaning towers. Quickly, Frank spotted the massive temple Chuck described, standing lopsidedly in the distance. Bingo!
Human, the man-god Jupiter can awaken, but only with your help.
Howled a shaggy Pannon, shaking a rusty bucket full of coins. Sorry, I think I'm broke, Frank mumbled, feeling around his tunic for money and finding none.
You're broke,
the goat snapped, clutching the stained rags he was forced to call an outfit. Frightened, Frank awkwardly waddled away, still somewhat struggling with his new anatomy. Howdy, could I interest you in some authentic human grub? Yelled another Pannon from outside his shop in a bad southern accent. No thanks. The smell of fresh pizza was enticing. But not only was Frank poor, but he was on a mission. Upping his pace with each step, Frank became more confident in his new body. When Frankie had first entered Godsend and found herself able to change anything about her appearance, her mind raced with the possibilities. She could be taller, prettier, or even thinner. But in the end, she decided to treat it like she treated all the other games she played. Whether it was a farming game or an MMO, she always made her character a boy named Frank. The difference was that in Godsend, the transformation went beyond aesthetics. It was all-encompassing. Now, Frankie's voice, face, and body were no longer hers, and it was liberating. After 10 minutes of running and excitedly muttering to herself in Frank's deep voice, the tower came into view. That's when Frank was stopped by a nasty group of Pannon.
Hey, human, are you looking for the academy?
Asked their sticky-furred leader. Yeah, I think it's just a couple blocks down, Frank said, pointing to the tower. In response, the group giggled as only goats could.
No, human. That's the old academy. It's out of commission. but we can take you to the new one.
With a smirk, he pointed to a dark alley. I'm good. But as Frank put his foot forward, so too did the Pannon.
No, I insist.
He smiled, gripping the hilt of his knife. Clear out, hornheads, a voice growled from behind. Frank spun his head around and was met with a scruffy-haired young man in the same navy tunic as him. With a scowling face drenched in melodrama, the sight of this young human was pure comedy to the gang of goats.
Careful, monkey,
the leader hissed, snapping his fingers with glee. Instantly, the rest of the gang whipped out their knives. In response, the boy smirked, retrieving a coin from his belt. Soon, a burning aura surrounded him like steam, and slowly, he unsheathed his sword. Terrified, the gang stepped back. Then, with a mad grin, the boy jammed the coin into the hilt of his sword, and a monster's roar echoed through the streets. Suddenly, the sword exploded with water gushing around the blade like a tornado. Swinging the sword out from his chest, he fired a wave of water at them. His wave was indiscriminate and collided with both the gang of Pannon and Frank. Pounded by the wave of water, the group flew backwards, tumbling across the stone road. Completely soaked, the gang of Pannon stared back at the boy in shock. "Move," he growled, pointing his sword at them. Frantically, the Pannon stumbled to their hooves, fleeing down a different alley. The boy sighed and removed the coin from his sword. In an instant, the water evaporated from the blade. "That was incredible! Thanks for the help!" Frank cheered, jumping to his feet, his body dripping with water. "Who are you?" The boy grumbled with disinterest as he sheathed his sword. I'm Frank." What's your name?" Frank giggled, trying and failing not to look creepy. "Noah." "Nice to meet you." Frank smiled, sticking out his wet hand. Instead of shaking it, Noah just glared at the wet hand with disgust. "You're in my way, old man." "Oh, haha. Between you and me, I'm not really this old. Actually, I don't care. Move now." "Oh, sorry. Wait, are you going to the academy too?" Ignoring Frank's question, Noah pushed past him. "Hey, what's your problem?" Frustrated, Frank chased after him. Noah rolled his eyes, holding up his coin as a threat. "Where'd you get that? How can I get one?" "Jesus, how much of a noob are you?" I just got here." "Well, let me give you some advice. Don't trust anyone. Humans, Pannon, no one. And when someone holds up a coin, run." "How long have you been here?" "Longer than you." "Obviously not that long." "Careful," he growled, waving the coin. "Well, it's just that you're on your way to the academy too, which means you're also new." "You know, I bet that's your only coin." Frank smirked, beaming with the confidence of a man over 6 feet. "Whatever." "Ha, I'm right, you are new. So where'd you get the sword and coin?" "It must have been at the academy." Then, after turning a corner, they collided with a sizable crowd of both humans and Pannons swarming the base of the academy tower. Noah groaned, halting at the crowd's edge.
So, in conclusion, this is no reason to panic. Business as usual. I guarantee it. Now have a fabulous night, my dudes.
An elderly goat proclaimed to the crowd.
"Yeah, right,"
Chuckled a delicate voice to Frank's right. Following the voice with his head, Frank spotted a stunning woman with golden hair. Someone had fun making their avatar, Frank thought to himself with a smirk. Excuse me, miss. What's going on here?"
"There's been another murder."
She sighed, turning to him. "Another? How many have there been?" With a smirk, the woman looked Frank up and down.
"You're new, aren't you?"
"Yeah. How'd you know?"
"Well, your outfit for one. It's stock. And, wet."
"Oh, yeah," Frank chuckled, looking down at his soaked tunic. Amused, the woman flashed Frank a flirtatious smile.
"The name's Jackie. And you are?"
"Wait, Jackie? Oh my god. Would you by any chance be a teacher IRL?"
"How do you know?"
She muttered, repulsed by the question. "Mr. Beaker, my name's Frankie Romano. Right now I'm actually playing from the Godsend Club at Tri-County."
"Oh, really? A new member? Well, it's nice to meet you, Frankie."
Oozing friendliness, Beaker stuck out her hand. As he shook it, suddenly Frank was pulled in close, and Beaker's face morphed into something terrifying.
"Listen, in here, the other club members and I have an understanding.
What's that?"
In-game, I'm Miss Beaker. And out-of-game, you tell no one about this."
"Aha, of course. Like they'd believe me." Frank giggled nervously.
Well, Frankie, welcome to Godsend."
With a cheerful smile, Miss Beaker released Frank. Frank."
"Huh?"
"In-game, I'm Frank."
"Oh, of course, you got it, Frank."
"Thanks."
"You know what? You're not the only new club member in Azure right now, but I'm sure Chuck told you."
I think so."
"Wait, where is he? Crap, he must have gone up front. Follow me."
Before following Miss Beaker, Frank looked around for Noah, but he had vanished. Frank sighed, trailing Miss Beaker through the dispersing crowd.
Oh, there he is.
Miss Beaker smiled, pointing at a young man with a stock tunic and medieval baseball hat. Harnessing all of his detective skills, Frank deduced the young man must be Roy. Speaking enthusiastically with Roy was the same elderly Pannon who had addressed the crowd. Plump as a pumpkin, the old goat was draped in a psychedelic robe that glistened with the sunlight.
Excuse me, General.
Miss Beaker interjected.
Jackie, my love, how are you? I can't tell you how glad I am to see you safe in these trying times.
The Pannon smiled, shaking his fluffy beetle-like hair.
As am I you, sir. Believe it or not, I have another new pupil for Adeo.
I believe it.
Yeah. This is Frank. Like Roy's new to Azure.
Hey, I'm Frank, but I guess you already know that. With a smile, Frank awkwardly stuck out his hand.
Frank, you don't say. I guess I do. Very cool to meet you, dude. I'm General Shu. I guess you could say I'm very old to Azure. But that's besides the point. Welcome, welcome, Frank. We love a new face.
With a childish grin, the general patted Frank on the head like a dog. Thanks, Frank giggled, unaccustomed to this sort of greeting. Hey, I'm Roy, the boy said, adjusting his medieval baseball hat, which Frank noticed had the phrase, Azure number 1, New York 0, stitched in blue. Judging by Roy's kitschy cap, it was obvious to Frank that human influence was very strong here. Nice to meet you,
General, the body count is rising and you've done nothing.
screamed a heartbroken human, desperately clinging to a blood-red tunic.
Dudes, please follow me. We'll get you enrolled and lodged so you can sleep safely.
Cheerfully, General Shu waved the group into the safety of the tower. Excuse me, General, what exactly is a Deo? Frank asked skeptically, as the jolly general led them to a massive marble desk manned by a Pannon receptionist.
Oh, silly me. Adeo Academy is the place humans go to better acclimate themselves to our world. It was set up many years ago by the creator of your game. We found it mutually beneficial to educate humans in our ways so that they could better contribute to our society.
Educate?
Precisely. We'll teach you essential survival skills, primarily how to utilize your spirit. And you carry out some very, educational missions for us in exchange. Oh, here we are. Moulash, would you please get them settled?
With that, General Shu pawned the pair off to the academy staff. Once enrolled, Frank and Roy were led to their dormitories on the 20th floor. No bigger than a walk-in closet, each ancient room housed a single student and was furnished with a small cot and candlelit desk. Lying flat on the desk was a dusty textbook, A Human's History of Azure, Jupiter to Launch. The room's only natural light trailed in from a tiny window overlooking the desk. From this dinky little porthole, Frank had a sky-high view of almost the entirety of Azurin. Even at this height, the city had an unmistakable personality that most cities lost at such altitudes. Feeling safe within his cozy new home, Frank settled into bed. Then, he closed his eyes and pictured the classroom. Yet again, his senses vanished before exploding back, now in the body of Frankie. Dazed, Frankie darted her eyes around the classroom like a startled lizard. Unsurprisingly, the boys were still playing Godsend. Regaining her composure, Frankie met Chuck's gaze and nodded. "Oh, Frankie, you're back. I mean away," Spud stuttered, nearly dropping his bag of chips. Not 10 seconds later, Roy drifted back as well. "Both of them are," Timmy laughed. What are the odds?" Spud giggled nervously. In response, Jacob rolled his eyes so hard that Frankie was shocked they didn't fall out. "Why you guys come to a Godsend club just to sleep in desks is beyond me," Matt sighed. "Well, you two are welcome to sleep here anytime," Spud interjected. Again, Jacob's face was splashed with disdain. "Yeah, we meet here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but we also have a Discord. So Frankie, if you have any questions or want to play, online on days other than those, that's where you can go," Chuck said.
All right, thank you.
Truly, Frankie felt indebted to Chuck and the club for all of their help. With its newest members awake, the club meeting drew to a close. Opting to let Beaker wake up in his own time, the group dispersed. As Frankie left the room, Chuck pulled her aside. "Listen, going to Godsend is a matter of closing your eyes. So the club goes there every night while we sleep. We also have a guild that you can join once you graduate from Adeo.
Oh, cool.
But Frankie, Godsend is no joke. Yes, it's beautiful, but it can also be very cruel.
So like real life.
To a fault. People have been known to disassociate after going.
What do you mean?
Well, they get so wrapped up in their life in Godsend that they stop caring about their own. If you ever feel like that's happening, we're here for you.
Thanks, but I think I'll be okay.
Good. Then I guess I'll see you in Godsend. Well, when our boat finally docks.
Wait, how does time work there?
Frankie was eager to know how much time she could spend there on any given day. 1 hour here is about 3 hours there, so one night's sleep can be about 2.5 days in Godsend. Well, depending on whether or not it's a school day.
Wait, so 1 year is actually
3. That's why I'm warning you about the whole disassociating thing. What grade are you?
8?
So a year away from high school. Well, high school's 4 years. In Godsend, that can feel like a lifetime. So try not to get lost in the sauce, okay?
Yeah, I'll see you in Godsend.
You bet. After Chuck's talk, Frankie drifted back to the middle school entrance. Outside, the air had a crisp autumn chill, the sun almost ready to set. Even so, as Frankie unchained her bike, she couldn't help but smile. Riding home, her mind raced with the possibilities. Adventure only one blink away.